Thank you for accepting to carry an interview with me.
My pleasure.
Thank you. First of all, I would like you to introduce yourself and the original work you do in France.
So my name is François Taddei. I'm a researcher, and as such, I don't have to teach, and therefore I am in a very privileged position because I can teach what I want, the way I want, to who I want. Otherwise, I just don't do it. Okay, and therefore I've progressively discussed with lots of students that wanted to learn things differently, and I was able to help them. And so we've created, initially we started informally, and then progressively we created a master program where students do different rotations in labs of different disciplines and create their own projects. And then we created a PhD program because they wanted to do a doctorate. And then we've created an undergrad program. We have an outreach program for high school, and we have a primary school. We have a festival of science for primary school children. Okay? And so the idea is that the PhD students mentor the master students, that mentor the undergrad students, that mentor the high school student, that offer something to the primary school kids.
That's really great. That's a quite original idea. So, what do you think this kind of setup of each individual being mentored and mentoring at the same time? What kind of differences did it add to the educational system?
I think typically there is people that know more than others, and depending on the field, it's not necessarily always the same order. But classically, it's turned into a hierarchy, okay, with the one that knew more giving orders to the one that know less. Okay, and that is killing the ability for the one that know less to innovate and experiment. And so the mentoring is very different. The mentor still know more, at least in one field, than the other, but because he knows more and is in a mentoring situation, he's helping the other one to grow. Okay, so he's not there to tell him what to do, he's there to help him to do whatever he wants to do, the mentee want to do.
So what kind of different projects do you have your students involved in? Like they choose whatever project they like, or is it driven into a certain discipline?
So they are tackling very interdisciplinary projects. Okay, typically the students that come to me are students that are not happy with the classical disciplinary division of science. Okay, so they come and they do, for instance, 3 rotations in 3 labs of 3 different disciplines. And this way they can really experiment new things, and eventually they write their own project. So that's at the individual level. At the collective level, we also encourage them to create clubs. And in these clubs, they come together and they define collectively a question that they want to tackle. And then they can invite some of the world experts to come and discuss it with them. And they can organize workshops, they can organize conferences, they can travel together to some place to learn something. And this way they can do things that otherwise would not be possible to do.
Do you think this kind of education hierarchy can start right from the beginning, like K-12 education, or do you think that it needs a bit of basic skills that you need developed, so you start by secondary school maybe rather than primary school?
A few years ago, the OECD asked me to write a report on the future of education in the 21st century and how to promote creativity and risk-taking, innovation, and so on. And so I started to read a lot because usually I work as a biologist, so I had to read a lot about education. And I mean, I know the way nature is evolving, and I know the way knowledge, or at least genetic information, is being evolving, and that was my source of inspiration. My students, my second source of inspiration, and then the literature was my third source of inspiration. And what I discovered is that there is very interesting innovation throughout the world. One of which is the one of Vicky Colbert that works with primary school children. And when I read what she does exactly the same with primary school kids as what I do with PhD students. Okay, so I think you could do it at any level. Okay, you have to do something that is relevant, and in order to do something relevant, maybe you have to learn to read, maybe you have to learn to solve a differential equation. It depends on whatever level you are. Okay, but you have to know what you want to do, and then in order to do something, there is knowledge that you have to acquire. And there is very generic knowledge, like learning to read, learning what's mathematics, advanced mathematics. All these things are very useful. And the reason why you want to learn them might depend on the circumstances, but if you're motivated to learn them, then it's going to be very easy.
So I think that the way to acquire knowledge is like a side process that it is a tool that you go to the end that you require.
Exactly. If you want to do something, it's learning by doing. Okay, or that's, I think, very important, and that's really the way Vicky Colbert does it, and that's very much what we do. What we add to this at the PhD level, and even at the high school and master level, and is the learning through research. Okay, so it's not learning by doing things that everybody has done before. It's learning by doing something new. It's learning by exploring the frontiers of knowledge, and that's a real challenge. That's an exciting challenge, and that's why people are really engaged in doing it, and they can learn anything in order to push the frontiers of knowledge. I was trained at doing mathematics and physics, and most of what I've learned after, biology, evolution, education, and so on, I learned because I was excited. And that's the way my students are learning. They have a project, for instance, at the frontier between biology and engineering, and there is an engineering student working with a biology student, and they're going to learn from each other as well. Okay, so it's also a lot of peer learning and peer mentoring.
So, being as I know you as one of the Wise Learners advisors. So I know you have this new way of being. It's okay to be crazy. So would you explain a bit about the crazy principle?
So basically, there is a very good video on TED that describes one single man dancing like a crazy man in front of everybody just eating. Okay, and then there is a second guy that comes and starts dancing with him, and then there is a third one, and then at the end of the 3-minute video, you have hundreds of people dancing together. Okay, so the main difference between being crazy and being a recognized innovator is social recognition. Okay. You're doing something different, okay? And that might be because you're crazy nuts, or maybe because you're crazily innovating, okay? And how do we know the distinction? Well, social recognition, and science has special ways of recognizing socially people that are proposing something radically different. I mean, we all know about Einstein or Darwin and so on, okay? There is the possibility of recognizing, it might be crazy, but that might actually be the reality that this is what people should go for. But for instance, in arts, Van Gogh was deemed crazy, and it's only later that his painting were recognized as that of a genius. Okay.
So let's move on to being a Wise Learner advisor. Why do you think is the importance of having this the Learner's Voice program as a part of the Wise Summit?
So I think, the Wise Summit is really interesting because it's bringing decision makers about education. Okay, but by definition, these decision makers in education have reached a certain level of maturity and recognition and so on, and they are more or less many layers away from the learners that are experiencing or maybe suffering today from the current education system. Okay, and the learner's voice is key in order to challenge these decision makers and telling them, there is other ways. We are experimenting it daily, and we are longing for something different. We want a systemic difference. So I think the more the learners are the more the learner's voice is heard during WISE, but everywhere actually, in all education systems throughout the world, the better the education system will be.
So what's the message that you send to all of the WISE learners?
So I've learned much more from learners than from anyone else. Okay, I've learned a few things from my professors. I've done lots of things from learners that I've been exchanging with. Okay, that includes the learners' voice that are here, but that includes learners I've met throughout the world. And that's, I think, absolutely key, is that we can all learn from each other. I consider myself as a learner. Okay, we are all learners, and we are all co-constructing knowledge. And the learners that are here have been selected based on their ability to be proactive, be empowered, and act to improve education wherever they are. Okay? And what I think is fantastic is that you've built a fantastic collective. Okay? And this collective makes you much stronger than any single individual. Okay? And you've met interesting people here, and that makes you even stronger. Okay? So network, as we know, is very important. The Arab Spring is about networks, and we want an education spring. Okay? And I think, the same way the Arab Spring is a youth spring, I think the education spring is going to be a youth spring. Okay, it's going to be a learner spring. Okay, and that's your role. Okay, take that message.
So, as a learner and part of the learner's voice, what kind of message do you send to the WISE organizers?
I think the WISE organizers are doing a fantastic job, and every year they are improving what they've done from the previous years. And I think one of the challenge is to improve the learner's voice program, because you've done so much in 1 week, but it's limited to what you could do in 1 week. Imagine you would be working for, say, 1 year together, okay? And each of you would be coming together and then exploring different parts of the world, then coming back together again, then, you know, go and see the most innovation that, you know, the WISE awardees are representing, go to MIT, go to the best possible labs, discover what research and technologies can bring to education. And, you know, individually it will be very difficult to do, but if there is a collective like yours doing this, you'll be exploring fantastic things, and, you know, you could come together, go explore, you know, and come together again, and I'm sure progressively you'll build the future of learning, which is even more than the future of education, which is learning everywhere. Education is, I'm telling you what to do, okay? The future of learning is you exploring the world and you as a collective building knowledge.
Thank you very much for this very nice interview, and it was really insightful in many different ways. And I mean, I think you represent a very good and new and original way of education that is proving to be successful.
My very pleasure. I mean, it's really pleasing to be able to interact with you and co-construct things together. And, you know, I might be a little older, but I still, you know, have the same sort of energy, and we share this will to learn and do things together. Thank you.
Thank you.